Well, I love drawing and painting ever since I was little, and I have had a teacher when I was 12 who taught me how to do oil painting. And then when I was about 16, I met these crazy artists at Banff who were art teachers, but they lived this incredibly exotic life. They were like gypsies. They had a home in Vancouver, but and I just kind of loved being around them. They were always talking about philosophy and just really interesting things. So that was initially, I think, what made me want to go into art, because it just seemed like such a wonderful way to live. Personal happiness, I suppose. And fulfillment. I think sometimes you come into life and each person has something they need to express. And for me, I needed to communicate and express myself. And for art was really, I felt very content when I was painting, it just spoke to me. I just couldn't really imagine doing other things. I think my reason for painting initially was to communicate something. So I've always perceived things, and I like to communicate what I perceive, which is also why I wound up being a playwright. In some ways, I switched into playwriting for a while because what I was communicating, it was obviously being received, whereas when you paint, you don't know how people are receiving it necessarily, but it's just an expression. It's just a way to express yourself for others, for someone else to perceive it. This woman, she was my friend Hilary Powell, who was a really brilliant woman, a poet, a writer, very, very smart, and we'd been friends ever since we were little. It was kind of, I knew of her when we were little, and we became friends when we were 20. So sometime when she was about 50 or odd, she asked me to take photos of her because she'd written a play and it was going to be done, and they wanted publicity photos. So I'm not a good photographer, but I decided to pretend I was a fashion photographer. And she pretended she was a model, and we did like an entire day, and I just shot photo after photo after photo. And then later I thought, I actually want to do some paintings about this. And while I was cropping a photo for something else, I accidentally cropped it so it was really just on her face. And then I thought, wow, that would be really interesting if I blew it up, just the brows and the chin, and made a big painting out of it. What would happen then? And that's how it started. The goddesses are people that I know. Some of them I know very well, and some, like my friend Hilary, I knew her very well. And some are people who were in a meditation group with me. So I got to see a lot of them over the time, right? So they're people I'm familiar with, and I usually do the painting and then see what comes up, because sometimes I don't know what's going to appear all the time I don't know what's going to appear when I'm doing a painting. I mean, the features are there, but the actual presence of the painting, you don't know until it's finished. So what usually happens is when I finish the painting, I sit with it for a while and something will come to me. Immersive? I paint using layers, so I create the colors not directly. I create the colors through a series of layers. So I have I have underpaintings, and then the very last layer is the kind of what is called alla prima, which is where you're just going for the colors that you see in the face. Well, I love portraits. That's one of the reasons I wanted to become a painter, I think, was just the whole thing where you go into a a public gallery, like when I went to the National for the first time, and I look across the room and there's this face, and it's like, I know that person. And then you realize it's someone from the 16th century Italy, right? And you go, oh, just looks like someone. So that whole connection with the past and with people, it's mysterious to me. I love the fact that portraits will speak to you. Well, I love Manet as well. And Manet was my other favorite artist. I just adored his work. I think because it was theatrical, and he also had people in groups, and he would, and Velázquez, and I used to love Andrew Wyeth. I haven't seen his work recently. I mean, he died, of course, but I haven't gone to a museum to see a retrospective. But and quite often figurative painters were not. It was really hard to see shows of figurative painters in the 1980s and 1990s. I went down to New York fairly often. I lived in Toronto, and it was rare. You know, it was they rarely showed them. I didn't. So it's actually kind of hard for me to say for contemporary artists who I really like. I know it when I see it. You know. When I was a student at the school, so this was in the 80s, 70s, 80s, I knew the artists, the abstract expressionists who had galleries and stuff. So interestingly, the way art was priced then had nothing to do, I mean, it had everything to do with the painting. And so if an artist did a series and it was a bust, those paintings weren't priced very high. And most dealers were really good at knowing a good painting. Like they'd go, oh, that's a really good one. And also people would come into the gallery and they'd all want the same painting. Like everyone would gravitate to the one that usually was the one the artist liked best. So that is how art used to be priced. It was all a matter of the personal opinion of the artist and the personal opinion of the gallery dealer. So they could. So then somewhere in 2000, I heard about this theory of. But a practice of pricing it by the square inch, and I thought that's horrible. How weird! But that's what we do now. Like, that's basically how you price your work, because there aren't those sort of gallery owners that used to take on an artist and for 20 years or 15, 20 years make their career, right, and then establish what their price would be. So many artists now are selling on their own, and people understand the square inch. You know, they used to get really mystified by, well, how come this is $500 and this is $1,000 and they're the same size? They would find it very upsetting if somebody said, well, this is a better painting. That would make them feel bad. Whereas if you do the square inch thing, no one's feelings are hurt. So that's so I do it by the square inch because, you know, but I do notice that some of my paintings more people gravitate to certain ones of my paintings than others. It's weird. I honestly, the whole thing's a bit of a mystery to me. I belong to an art salon run by Enda Bardell, and she's amazing. And so we became friends in 2010, and by joining this group of artists, it's like 6 of us get together and we discuss what the latest trends are, and whether because so many trends come in and out, and if you spend too much time investigating them all, you just waste a lot of time when you could be painting. So that's been really helpful. You know, we'll bring up the NFT thing, and what does that mean? And like when we first started, it was the online gallery thing, and was there any point? In the 70s and 80s, you just went to, if you wanted to be a famous artist, you went to New York. But the problem with going to New York was that it was really unpleasant, and you could die. You know, people were always getting mugged, and it was dangerous. And as a single woman, the last thing I wanted to do was live in a place where I'd be scared all the time. So there's no way I want to go to New York. But and some people go to New York and suffer through all that, and nothing happens, right? You don't. So I don't know what the route is now.